Okay, welcome all of you. I'm going to get each of you to give us a short introduction to who you are and what you do.
Pnawn da, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Idris Jones. I chair the Snowdonia Enterprise Zone Advisory Board. The Enterprise Zone was set up in 2012 by Welsh Government to promote developments at the Trawsfynydd decommissioning site and also at the Llanbedr RAF site. My role in this is leading a sort of a private sector, public sector group to move things forward.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed.
I'm George Beveridge, so I'm chairman of the Cumbria Local Enterprise Partnership. As I'm the first LEP to introduce myself, I'll just explain Local Enterprise Partnerships, save my two colleagues from having to do the same thing. So, Local Enterprise Partnerships, there are 38 of them across the country, including the one I chair in Cumbria. They are all public-private partnerships which bring together private sector business and the local public sector, so local authorities, for example, further education, higher education institutions, for example, to collaborate around promoting and delivering economic growth in our particular sub-region. So that's what LEPs do. There used to be 39 of us, but now there's 38 because two amalgamated, so I can't tell my sort of we sound like a John Buchan novel joke anymore because there's only 38 of us. So I chair the Cumbria LEP, and I also have a portfolio of other non-exec and chair positions.
Okay. By a process of deduction, you must be Chris.
I am, yes.
Hello.
I'm Chris Starkey. I have the day-to-day responsibility for running the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, which covers Norfolk and Suffolk. So those who worked on Sizewell B, you're very welcome. We'll welcome you back for Sizewell C shortly, I'm sure. And local enterprise partnerships in general terms are, as George explained, partnerships of the private and public sector. And our role and our remit really is to set the tone for economic growth in our local areas. So we work with central government and deliver jobs and growth in our particular areas. We each have economic strategies and a sort of suite of tools at our disposal, support for businesses, support for skills, and for infrastructure as well in general terms.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And Fiona?
Afternoon. Yes, I'm Fiona McMillan, and I'm a newly appointed member of the Heart of the South West LEP. But actually, today I'm also representing the Nuclear Southwest, which is a bringing together of four of the Southwest LEPs. And in a previous life, I was principal at Bridgewater College. And when I finished there, I also had the opportunity to join the board of the Nuclear New Build, and I'm a non-exec director.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. I want to kick off talking about LEPs, LEPs, whatever you want to call them. How important is it for them to work across borders, if you like? Do you want to kick us off on that?
Yes,
Fiona?
absolutely. I mean, if we look at the Southwest, you've heard already today about, the importance of the Southwest and the Southwest legacy. So, the LEPs in the Southwest coming together to look at the issues for the Southwest and how to maximise the benefits of such a major infrastructure project is obviously really important. But then there's lots of lessons to be learnt. So, being the first location of a massive, renaissance for nuclear industry, we will learn things, and we are learning things, and Sizewell hopefully will gain from that, and also looking forward to the other projects, and then we're also working very closely with Wales. And with Cumbria on the sort of more national development of nuclear and the nuclear industry and the skills agenda.
Because it's more broad, isn't it, Chris, than just working with your next door neighbour.
It is, yeah.
It's having something in common with another region entirely, which may be pursuing a similar sort of scheme.
Absolutely. So we work collaboratively. Yeah, with our next door neighbours, obviously. We work with Cambridgeshire and Essex as well, and colleagues in south and north on different themes and different areas. And it's also worth saying as well that the 38 LEPs also work collectively together. So we put in a joint response to the government's industrial strategy, and we'll work together on areas of common interest, like on enterprise zone policy, on growth hub policy, so support for small businesses and so on. And I think the nuclear cooperation that you see on the stage today is part of that.
You're nodding, I can see there, George.
Yeah, I think I think collaboration between LEPs is growing now. I think in the early years of LEPs, we were kind of focused on our own geographies, trying to work out what was what in Cumbria or New Anglia or wherever. So I think now we've largely worked through that and have got pretty solid plans in our own areas. We're now looking at broadening our horizons and driving a lot more collaboration. And I think the industrial strategy that we heard a bit about from Matt Clark from the government this morning opens up a significant opportunity for collaboration, because I don't think any sector deal, including a nuclear sector deal, can be successfully landed with government without the place element, the local element, being properly integrated in and being part of the proposal. So the sector needs to decide what's important for it and what it needs, what the key ingredients of the sector deal are. And then the LEPs need to collaborate amongst ourselves and with the nuclear sector to set out how that's delivered locally, because a lot of the aspects like skills, delivery of infrastructure, business support to develop local supply chains is all best delivered locally. And that's front and centre of what the LEPs do. So I think the industrial strategy with the concept of sector deals is a great opportunity for us to work together in nuclear and no doubt in other sectors. So I think it's essential to land these sector deals that we can work together.
On the question of skills, John, I mean, there are training providers, aren't there? And we know the National College for Nuclear. Is that how closely should you all be collaborating with them to make sure that you can all deliver the right skills that are needed for this industry?
I think collaboration is essential. I think what makes it difficult from our perspective in Wales is that skills is a devolved responsibility. So we need to ensure joined-upness, not just between LEPs, but also between countries. And working, there are 3 enterprise zones, for example, in North Wales, in Anglesey with Wilfynewydd and developments there, and Snowdonia, as well as in North East Wales in Deeside. The whole working together across the region, factoring that into the Cardiff end and then factoring that into the National Nuclear Skills Group that Fiona Raymond chairs, bringing all of that together, as well as cross-border working, in our case, developing linkages with the Cheshire-Warrington LEP and the whole nuclear crescent, really, that extends from Cumbria all the way across to Trawsfynydd and Wilfa.
Because there are extraordinary parallels that can be mined, aren't there, really? I mean, half the southwest, you're the first LEP, aren't you, to have a new power station, as
Absolutely,
you were saying.
yeah.
What would you say when you're talking to colleagues or contacts that you make? What's worked and what hasn't? What have the challenges been?
Well, where to start?
Well, quite.
I think in terms of what's worked, I would say, and in a way this is a theme that's kind of occurred throughout today, really, is the ability of organisations to actually come together. I think the recognition that this is a massive project, and again that's been said, and the recognition therefore that it's not something that you can do in isolation. It's something that organisations have to come together to do, and I think we have achieved that very well. Whether it's from the LEP's perspective of coming together, whether it's councils, whether it's training providers. We've actually developed a Hinkley Point training agency, which is made up of a range of providers who would otherwise be in competition. The Chambers of Commerce. It really has been a need for people to stand back and say, this is a big picture issue. This is something that we have to work on together. And so, the outcome of that, I think, has been the enabling of a number of projects that wouldn't otherwise have happened if people hadn't worked together to make that happen. And I think the other thing that has been a really important positive has been the time that the community has taken to understand about this project and to understand about EDF's vision for it. And Humphrey said earlier on today, that this is about, a long-term legacy. And I think that, that trust about it being a long-term legacy has been really important. I think we were talking earlier outside of here about the implications when you don't have a long-term legacy and you look at industries that come and go and what happens to communities as a consequence. So it really has been very important to look long-term. Likewise, I think it's been very important for EDF Energy and its supply chain, its tier one contractors, to understand about the Southwest, because the Southwest is, and everybody would say the same, I'm sure, as a region, it's different to other regions. And one of the things that makes it different is it has a very large number of SMEs. So how do you provide a means whereby SMEs, and SMEs in this sense is small, medium enterprises.
Yes,
not
no, I understand.
How do you support those people who have aspirations to get the most from a very significant project?
Now, I understand that you've set a new business support service with West of England LEP, haven't you? How does that actually work, and how do organisations get hold of the funding that might be able to provide? Well,
that's an interesting issue. I think how it works, and it's been in place for a while, so it started off as a sort of joint activity between EDF Energy and the Chamber of Commerce, Somerset Chamber of Commerce, to set up a portal for businesses in the southwest and in Somerset to identify themselves, to register and identify themselves as potential suppliers. But it then became very clear that actually to become a supplier, you needed support. So understanding how to kind of break down complicated work packages, how to kind of develop the necessary approaches and skills, how to build your expertise such that you could become nuclear ready. That was a big issue. So the Hinkley Point Supply Chain Enabling Team was set up, and here comes the challenge, because actually the funding for that has been incredibly difficult. So, because it isn't something that the employer is going to necessarily pay for until they know that they've got a contract, you have to have some way of supporting that. So the LEP played an important part in facilitating that, but it continues to be a challenge because government sources of funding are not actually very flexible. So it started off with a European social funding source of funding, and that has become increasingly more difficult. And most funding that comes down from government for these sorts of projects are capital focused, and capital's fine and really useful, but at the end of the day you've also got to fund people. And finding sources of funding which are revenue focused is actually quite a challenge.
You two are both nodding at the end there, John and George, nodding. This is absolutely what you're seeing as well, George, yes?
Yeah, I think a lot of the funding programmes that are available to LEPs come as capital, and it's a message that the LEPs generally in the LEP network keep feeding back into government, is actually we need the right balance of capital and revenue. Because when you invest in some capital facilities, you usually need some revenue to commission them, get them going, get them into operation and build sustainable revenue streams. So sort of 100% capital programmes are, we won't say no. But it does make implementation quite challenging.
It's more complicated, in other words, is it, John? Yeah.
I think what we're seeing from a Wales perspective really is the benefit of some of the devolved responsibilities in terms of economic development. And Mike Tynan this morning referred to the Fit for Nuclear programme that's being supported by Welsh Government. So that's actually allowing some of our smaller companies to grow in terms of their nuclear skills capability and working in partnership with colleagues in the Southwest to see what opportunities that there are. And it's really about being joined up across the whole region, really, and across the whole of the UK to make all of this happen. And actually having funding for these programmes is a key issue.
Chris, Sizewell C, obviously very early stages.
Well, we're 5 years in so far.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, it's sort of.
Things,
So what contact have you had? What support from EDF have you had in terms of collaboration and potential supply chain?
A lot of work with EDF. I think one of the lessons from certainly that Hinkley are sharing, and indeed the central government team, is you can't plan too early. Now that's a difficult message to your average SME who says wants his business today, not in 5 years' time. But we've been working closely with EDF and continue to locally, developing as in Somerset a web portal and a supplier database. There's more than 1,000 businesses from Norfolk and Suffolk who are registered on that, taking part in the Fit for Nuclear programme. So our businesses, and in a sense, almost 1996, it's not that long ago since they started, they last working on a nuclear programme locally. So we're very much about trying to recognising that Sizewell is a little bit over the horizon, but actually they could do work right now in Somerset. So think of Somerset when you want to work locally. So developing the supply chain, support for SMEs, and I would reiterate colleagues' comments that absolutely our hands are tied as LEPs. Our funding, more than 90% of the funding we're given is capital. So we recently invested £10 million in a new energy skills centre. £10 million of capital funding, no revenue funding to go with it. But we're just working, we have to work behind the scenes and be creative to make those sort of things happen. So,
how does your operation change? Now, let me put this another way. You have an operational power station anyway on your patch.
We do.
How much does that inform your relationships with businesses or potential business clusters, whatever? In other words, does it help to have one that's already
It absolutely
running?
helps, because you can see a power station there, it's working, they can win contracts with it as well. And actually, one thing, Fiona was saying all areas are slightly different, and that is true. One of the opportunities that we have in Norfolk and Suffolk is offshore wind, continuing oil and gas, and in fact nuclear is a sort of third leg of our stool, our all energy coast. I think the only thing in Norfolk and Suffolk we don't do is hydropower, but someone once said it was a bit flat in Norfolk. So our tactic is around the opportunities for young people and for businesses to work across a range of sectors, and I think our message really to the nuclear industry, as it is to the offshore wind industry, and in fact to the oil and gas industry, is you all have skills needs, you all have requirements over future years. We would like to see more local collaboration on the ground and greater work, because actually it's a bit of a zero-sum game if some people get taken from oil and gas to work in nuclear, from construction to work in offshore wind and so on. That doesn't help young people sat in our colleges. So we agree a collective approach to engineering, absolutely, and that's certainly our approach. So yes, we have an existing nuclear power station. We also have opportunities in other energy businesses as well. It's all part of the kind of energy mix and opportunity for businesses in our area.
George, I think you mentioned that you're a former CBI North West Regional Chair, already an engaged community. What do you think there is to learn from other LEPs?
Well, I think, there's a lot to learn. the Heart of the South West are sort of ahead in terms of new nuclear build, but equally Cumbria has it has the highest concentration of nuclear workers through the Sellafield programme, which has been there for decades. So I think there's a lot to share in both directions, and we're putting together now a serious collaboration between the South West through Heart of South West and South West Nuclear, and the North West, led by Cumbria, and the relatively new organisation called Centre for Nuclear Excellence, based in Cumbria, to collaborate seriously on how we support a sector deal for nuclear. So we bring the sort of sense, we bring the place part of it together. And I think there's a couple of examples where I think there's already good collaboration going on. So the new National College for Nuclear, I'm really pleased that we've got one of the hubs for that in Cumbria at Lake College, and Chris Natt was speaking earlier on from that college, and Bridgewater College in Somerset is the other hub, supported also by University of Cumbria and Bristol University at the higher education level. So that gives us a structure where, almost by default, we can communicate and share learning on the skills front, both from our existing expertise in Cumbria around Sellafield and what's happening with the EDF programme in the South West. And it was great to hear from the EDF colleagues this morning about their apprentice degree programme that they now have running for 2 or 3 years, Actually, in Cumbria, we've had an apprentice degree programme for about the last 10 years. It wasn't actually called that originally, but is now. And we shared quite a lot of that learning 2 or 3 years ago with colleagues in the Southwest, and it's great to see that sort of up and running. So I think there's a huge amount we can share. And for sector deals to be successful, I think the LEPs have got to come together around nuclear and other sectors to make that work.
You mentioned the Centre of Nuclear Excellence initiative, which is in its infancy, I think, broadly speaking, isn't it? What role do you see that playing in the development of nuclear in your region and beyond? And how does it all feed into the Northern Powerhouse?
Well, if we start with Cumbria, I think I'm really pleased. I welcome the formation of the Centre for Nuclear Excellence. It's a very similar organisation to Nuclear Southwest, which brings together the key players, the key businesses in nuclear, in Cumbria in our case, to collaborate and speak with a single voice. So prior to that organisation forming, it was much harder for the LEP to get a single coherent view from the nuclear sector on what the requirements were around infrastructure, skills, housing, you name it. With the formation of CONE, it gives us a focal point where nuclear players can come together and we can get an authoritative single voice on what's required. And that's extremely helpful from a LEP point of view. I also think it provides a platform for the nuclear capability in Cumbria, not only to support Sellafield, New Gen when that comes along, but also to promote itself more widely around the UK and internationally. So, I mean, I'm from Aberdeen originally, you might be able to tell from my accent, but I often talk about there's huge nuclear concentration in Cumbria, and doing in Cumbria with nuclear what Aberdeen has done with oil and gas. Yeah. So 25 years ago, 30 years ago, Aberdeen was predominantly virtually 100% supporting the North Sea oil and gas industry. Now it's about 60% global oil and gas, only about 30 to 40% is the North Sea, so it's very much one of the global oil and gas hubs, along with Houston and Texas being the other one. Well, my vision for nuclear in Cumbria is we become a more global hub along lines of Aberdeen for oil and gas, and I think the Centre for Nuclear Excellence can bring those key organisations together and provide a platform that helps to make that reality. Interesting
thought. John, you don't have LEPs in Wales, do you? But as you're chair of the enterprise zone, I believe.
That's right. Yes.
So how closely are you involved with Heart of South West? Because I understand there is some sort of collaboration between the two.
Indeed, we work very closely with our colleagues in Welsh Government, who in turn work with colleagues in the Heart of the South West. I mean, my motto in life is steal with pride, and I see so much good stuff happening in England. I put all my prejudices about England on one side.
Good of you, John. That's good of you.
It's like the British Lions, isn't it? Really, it's about taking what's happening, the great stuff that was done in Bridgewater College in the early days, duplicating some of that in North Wales, seeing what's happening with the Centre of Nuclear Excellence, and working together with partners. We have got an aspiration to be part of the National Nuclear College, fitting all of that in. I'm sure our colleagues in Cardiff will unlock relevant doors. I'm very much an optimist all the time. And it's how we link in with the stuff that we heard about this morning, the Somerset Ladder developments and so on, actually just duplicating those, not going away and reinventing them ourselves, but actually just duplicating them, doing the obvious, simple stuff. And I think we've got great examples here from the three regions that we can copy and learn from each other.
As an enterprise zone, what have you focused on to de-risk, if you like, from a private sector perspective?
I'm from the Snowdonia enterprise zone perspective. Our main interest really is in looking at the development of small modular reactors. At Trawsfynydd, this is the advert, ladies and gentlemen. At Trawsfynydd, we've got a prime site. We think we've got the best site in the UK for a potential small modular reactor development. So what we've been doing, working with partners in the public sector to seek to identify what are the risks that the public sector can actually de-risk. So it's stuff like identifying cooling capacities for actual generation of electricity, ensuring that there are no risks associated with seismicity of land, associated with grid connection, and so on and so forth. And it's about making life as easy as possible for small modular reactor developers when the development happens, and I'm sure it will happen. All logic points in that direction. Emotion also points in that direction, because we need to have an economic growth across the UK, not just with the big reactors, but also on a wider basis. So our work really is in attracting companies to the locality. And we realise it's not a quick job. It won't happen overnight, but we're there for the long term, because we have a supportive community who want to see the nuclear legacy that's currently in South Fynydd continue well into the future, and the jobs, etc., that will bring.
Okay, interesting stuff. Final thought, Fiona?
I think we have a tremendous opportunity to do something quite transformative. You know, we're definitely trying to make that happen in the southwest, and I think with colleagues, you know, across the country, and probably the most important part of that transformation is actually about aspiration. It's about raising aspiration for businesses, for young people. You know, we've heard about the skills challenge, and there are so many young people who have the potential to do more than perhaps they currently perceive as their opportunity. And this project, the Hinckley project, is the start of something which could really make a big difference to us as a productive nation.
Thank you, Fiona. Chris, optimistic?
Absolutely optimistic. Say we have the advantage of being behind Hinckley, so we can hopefully learn the right lessons and deliver a lower cost power station. I think it's EDF was saying that. So it's to be a young person today, actually think of the opportunities that are out there, and nuclear, as we've been discovering today, is right up there.
You just have to get those young people though to engage, don't you, George? Final thought.
Yeah, I'm certainly optimistic, and I don't want to be outdone on the advertising front. So at Cumbria, 25 to 30% of our economy is nuclear, but it's also a fantastic place to live and work. So, from a lifestyle point of view, and perhaps people who might be looking for a lifestyle change or whatever, Cumbria offers some fantastic opportunities, both from what's happening in nuclear, some of our advanced manufacturing activities as well. We've got a great food and drink sector, agricultural sector. So from a lifestyle point of view, we'd love you to come and live and work and play in Cumbria as well.
Top that, John.
Well, how can I? I think quite easily. We talk about the Northern Powerhouse, don't we? Well, I think we should be talking about the Greater Northern Nuclear Powerhouse. Cumbria is old northeast Wales in terms of Rheged and the rest of it. That's old Wales. So I'm really pleased to be with my Celtic friends here, and we'll even forget the Angles that landed on the East Coast. So it's about working together, ladies and gents, and that's how we'll make the difference. Because it's about having a good laugh at the same time, but we'll make a difference to the economy because we want to make a difference.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. John Idris-Jones, George Beveridge, Chris Starkey and Fiona McMillan, CVE. Thank you very much indeed.